This is the Leica M EV1, the first Leica M mount camera without a rangefinder. It instead replaces it with the same high-quality EVF that we have come to love from the Leica Q3, and it leads to a few questions. First, does this combination give you enough of the M shooting experience? Then, who should be even considering this camera? And perhaps most importantly, is this the end of the Leica rangefinder? In today's video, we're going to attempt to answer these three questions. Let's get into it. All right, so admittedly, this video is a little bit weird to make because we don't really need to speak as much about the image quality itself. That's because I've already done this in my past videos about the Leica M and the M11P. The Leica M EV1 is the Leica M11 through and through. The only difference is the optical rangefinder has been swapped for a digital viewfinder, and we also have the addition of content credential. But other than that, the same 64 gig internal storage, same design, same UI, same settings, same color science, same battery, same sensor, and the same processor. And we'll get to why that last bit matters in a second. So if you're familiar with the image that we get with the M11 or the M11P, then you're familiar with the EV1. The real core of this discussion here is the shooting experience, because it's very different and also honestly very hard to make a video about because it's difficult to record either the optical viewfinder or the EVF, but we're gonna do our best here. So what's the experience like? Does it give you the same feeling that you get when using a rangefinder? When I first saw rumors about an upcoming Leica M with an EVF, there were mock-ups showing that there would be this digital rangefinder patch within the EVF. This is not the case. When you look through the viewfinder, you just get this really nice, high-resolution live view of what the camera is seeing. At first, I thought I wasn't gonna like it, but in my time using it, I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I expected. Again, it's the same EVF that we have on the Leica Q3, which admittedly is one of my favorites. It's 5.76 million dots, plenty bright, and very thankfully to many, has a built-in diopter, which actually brings up some ways in which it's actually better than a rangefinder. Look, rangefinders are awesome, but they do have some significant drawbacks. If your eyesight isn't particularly great, or you're using a lens other than a 28, 35, 50, or you're trying to nail focus at like a really wide aperture on a longer lens, it can be a challenge. So the Leica M EV1 actually ends up opening the M mount to a lot of lenses that folks normally stray away from because they don't really feel as comfortable with them. I had the opportunity to shoot with a few of the new close focus lenses, for example. The experience is much preferred over using live view on my screen on my M11. Same goes with wide angle lenses. I know I've spoken a lot about the Typhawk 21mm on the channel before. I also ended up using the 24mm Summilux a ton, and being able to see the entire frame within the viewfinder was worlds better than just kind of guessing when you're using the rangefinder. And likewise, I personally found it much easier to nail focus at wide open apertures, even on like the 50 Noctilux or the longer telephoto lenses. I'm sure there's gonna be at least 3 of you in the comments that say you've been shooting on M cameras since before I was born, and you can track a bald eagle at 0.95 f-stop,
one-handed, uphill both ways.
but like, it's easier. I'm sorry, but this is easier for that. But why is it easier? Well, like I mentioned, this is partially due to that high quality EVF. On the EV1, you're getting a real-time live exposure preview and the full field of view as well. So if you're shooting at 50mm lens, the EVF shows the full 50mm lens and your exposure the entire time. But the most important change that we have with the EV1 is the new function button. So what used to be the little rangefinder lever on a traditional Leica M is now a two-way function button. If you push it one way, you get one custom function button, and if you pull it the other way, you get a different custom function button. And you can program these to be your focus assistants. So I programmed mine to be focus magnification one way, and then pulling it the other way is focus peaking. To me, this is the single most enjoyable part of the EV1. The position of that lever is perfect to quickly press or pull with your thumb, and then you can still have your finger easily managing your focusing tab at the same time, and your trigger finger, your shutter finger, never comes off the shutter button either. Because of this, I think I ended up getting more hits at wide apertures on the EV1 than I usually do on my M11. Now, in theory, you could program, your custom buttons to do those same things, but then you're either moving your camera away from your face or you're moving your finger away from the shutter button, and that wastes valuable time that you might need. Another potentially obvious thing is that you're still getting a lot of the uniqueness of the M mount, that you wouldn't if you were deciding between, the EV1 or like a Leica Q camera. Things like zone focusing are much easier on M lenses, and manual focus process in general is undoubtedly better on the EV1 compared to the Q3, for example. And part of the joy of a Leica is having the wealth of 70 years worth of lens choices that you can choose from based off of the character or sharpness or third party or vintage lenses, like you name it. You can pick the lenses that give you the unique quality that fits your personal taste or your budget. But there are some drawbacks. So honestly, when you're on these trips and testing a new camera, it's really hectic. New country, new camera, new to me lenses, new people, and I don't really do all that much street either, so that's a unique challenge for me as well. So most of the time I was focused on getting photos and really thinking about how to convey my experience with this camera with all of you. And I didn't really film as much as I would have liked to if I was in my element, my own home backyard. So now that I'm back home, I'm realizing I have less B-roll than I would have hoped. Well, that's where Storyblocks comes in. Storyblocks is a stock media platform that offers unlimited downloads of diverse, high-quality content that is one simple subscription. And anything you download from Storyblocks is 100% royalty-free, pre-licensed, and ready to use. And they even had footage from those same small little towns in Italy that we were visiting, which was rad. Best yet, Storyblocks is committed to providing authentic stock content created by real artists, which is great in this ever-increasing world of AI and AI slop. They have over 1 million HD and 4K files, images, motion graphics templates created by real artists, including a ton of DaVinci Resolve templates, which I know on this channel, we like Resolve. And if you sign up now, you get 2 extra free months when you sign up for an annual plan. So go to storyblocks.com/Meshna or use the link in the description to get those 2 free months. And a huge thank you as always to Storyblocks for sponsoring today's video. But my own B-roll issues aside, I'll admit there are some drawbacks to the EV1 that impact the shooting experience as well. The first is that Maestro 3 processor, which is again the same that we have in the M11 and the M11P. One minor limitation is that means we don't get the downloadable Leica looks. Apparently that's only available on a Maestro 4, so that's why we only get those in the Q3, the SL3, SL3S. Small thing. Where the bigger issue arises is the speed of the camera. Now, the M11 is notoriously slow at boot up time, which is annoying, but it doesn't impact you all that much because while the camera's turning on, you can still look through the optical rangefinder and focus while you're waiting for the camera to finish turning on. But when we have an EVF, this means you're sitting here with just a completely black screen that you're looking through. And that can lead to missing more shots than on an M11. Testing the two side by side, they have the same boot up time, and honestly, it ends up impacting the shooting experience much more noticeably on the EV1. The next issue I have is with the focus peaking. So with that new function lever, we can quickly turn it on and off on the focus peaking, which is great and all, but we don't get any new levels of customization when it comes to focus peaking compared to an M11. We just have on and off, a color selection, and then the high or low sensitivity. I found that in most instances, even with the lowest sensitivity, it's not actually all that helpful. You can see here in this example with Dave, basically everything has a red outline around it. And when we're trying to be precise with focus, especially at wide apertures, this doesn't really help us all that much. Okay, we're at low peaking, f1.4. And from infinity down to around 5 feet, it's still showing that it's in focus. So it's showing that that's in focus, like right there. Let's take that photo. That is not going to be in focus. If focus peaking is going to be a primary method for achieving accurate focus within this system, I think Leica needs to give us very fine-tooth adjustments for how sensitive that focus peaking is. Another drawback I have is with the focus magnification. So you sort of get 2 strengths of focus magnification. Same on an M11. The initial magnification, it works really well, but in those instances where you need to punch in a little bit further to that second level, you start to experience a bit of lag. Again, the experience is the same on the LCD live view screen. So I'll show you an example here since it's a little easier to see than through an EVF. But you can see that there's a little slight delay as I'm moving around. I think this is a Maestro 3 issue since I've never had that similar type of issue on a Q3. I mostly found myself using that single punch in magnification anyways, and I found that it does work really well. So I wouldn't let this in particular be a deal breaker for you, but the fact that both of the focus assistants that we get from Leica, both of them have an issue is a bummer for sure. One other thing you might consider is the battery life. On my M11, I basically have never worried about the battery. I shoot all day, maybe 2, then I plug it in at night, sometimes on a trip when I go to bed, and it's good to go. But after shooting like a half day with the EV1, I noticed the battery was much lower than I expected to be. On the one hand, makes sense. We're powering a full second screen with that EVF. But it's really drastic how much shorter that battery lasts. Shot rating type things are usually good directionally at best, but Leica has rated the EV1 for 244 shots and the M11 is rated for 700 shots. So it's like half the battery life, less. USB-C charging, it's great and all, but I would definitely recommend getting a second battery if you're going with the EV1. So back to that initial question. Does it feel enough like an M? Does it feel enough like a rangefinder? Truly, I think nothing can replace the joy and the delight of an optical rangefinder. So in that sense, no, not really. But I really did enjoy using the EV1 a lot more than expected. The new function lever is really handy and it makes the experience really fun in a way that is sort of this nice halfway point between the M and the Q. I think another question that I and a lot of other people have with the launch of this camera is this the end of the rangefinder moving forward? No. Leica made it very clear to us that this is an extension of the M system and not a replacement for what makes the M an M. There's still digital rangefinders like M11 and I assume the M12 someday. There's still analog rangefinders like the M6, and now there's this new EV1 and maybe someday an EV2 as well. I think this is a really good first step to establish that segment, but I'd love to see some further innovation. Right now, I feel confident saying that a rangefinder camera is the best way to manually focus in photography, but I don't know that I would say that this current implementation of the EV1 is the best way to manually focus an EVF camera. Leica has developed pretty solid autofocus and subject detection tech on the Q3 and the SL cameras, so it'd be cool to see some use of that subject recognition with manual focus to get sort of a confirmation when your subject is in focus, for example. This is what Nikon has done really well with their latest generation of cameras. You can select an autofocus point and then manually focus, and then the box that you've selected will actually turn green when that thing is in focus. Could Leica do something similar with this? I don't know. I'm just a dumb YouTuber sitting in his office and asking a bunch of skilled engineers to do something that might be very difficult, but I would like to see just something a little bit different. So who should actually consider getting this M EV1? First, we have the folks that just kind of can't use a rangefinder like they used to. Maybe your vision just isn't what it used to be anymore, or maybe you've always had some type of visual impairment and the rangefinder has just never been to you. I'd say I somewhat fall in that category. I'm a little bit nearsighted, but it's not enough for contacts, and I don't really like wearing my glasses outside of when I'm driving, and I really don't like using glasses on a rangefinder. So for me, I actually found the EVF to be very helpful. So if you're someone who's in this category, I do think this is a great option.
But Kat, what about a Visoflex?
So yes, you could use a Visoflex, but the EV1 is better for a few reasons. You've got a 5.7 million dot screen compared to 3.7 on the Visoflex. You also don't get that new function lever if you're using a Visoflex, which again is my favorite part of the EV1. And of course, there's the vanity of having a big old Visoflex thing sticking out the top of your pretty Leica, which looks a lot worse when you're taking a photo of your camera next to your coffee at the cafe in the morning. Another segment is the folks who really want to use those more non-traditional lenses, the 21 mils, the 90 mils, the close focal lenses, the Noctilux, for example. I think that audience might appreciate having the EV1 as a second camera. So I think this serves that like higher end segment quite nicely. And then there's the other end of the spectrum. I think that it's fair to say that the Q series is like the gateway drug into Leica. It certainly was for me. But Leica presented the EV1 to us as a gateway between the Q and the M. On the one hand, I agree. It's kind of like an M with training wheels. And there's a lot of people who sort of waffle between a Q and an M and have switched back and forth between the two. Do not lie. I know there's people out there, you're watching this. If you're one of those people, drop like a waffle emoji in the comments. I'm pretty sure there's a waffle emoji. I don't know. If there's not, pancake emoji instead. But anyways, I think the issue I have with the positioning of this being a camera for sort of the M-curious segment is the price. The Leica M EV1 is priced at $8,995 US, which is the same list price as the M11. So this means it's about $2,300 more than a Q3 and only $850 less than an M11P. But you're also gonna have to buy a lens and an extra battery. So at that point, like maybe you should just get an M11 or an M11P. Now, my understanding is that the EVF is supposed to be cheaper than all of the components that go into an optical rangefinder. That's why the EV1 is actually lighter than an M11. So I'm confused why the price is the same as an M11. I would have liked to see this closer to that $7,500 mark for it to make more sense as a true in-between, especially when you consider the prices of a used M11. I don't know, it's hard to have discussions about price anymore because like this global trade situation is just, it's a moving target. It sucks. I don't like it. I wish stuff was cheaper. All in all, I really enjoyed the EV1, and I do think it makes sense for a lot of people. So I'm glad it's another option in the Leica family for those who want or need it. And for those who don't, that's totally fine. Just go out there and make something that you're excited about, regardless of what camera it is on. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.